So, Eric, let's talk about some behind the scenes of wrestling, and then I do want to get into all these questions. We got a ton to get to, but man, there's been some big news in the last several weeks of AEW, and we haven't talked a lot about it because it happens behind the scenes. And really, a lot of fans probably aren't seeing that this is all a huge deal. But I think it's a really big old deal. You know, I know as fans, we like to focus on creative and what we see on television, but behind the scenes, QT Marshall, who's a day one AEW guy, he's gone. He's worked and wore a lot of hats in AEW behind the scenes. Kevin Sullivan, another day one AEW guy who had a long history at TNA and Impact, and a Nashville based guy, and he's out. And there's rumors that there's another name. I don't know that that's my place to say, but talk to me about it. What do you think of all these behind the scenes goings on? I mean, we've seen before Keith Mitchell leave, and now Kevin Sullivan's out, and now QT Marshall's out. There's rumor there's another. I mean, a lot of the behind the scenes staff is leaving AEW. And I guess there's two ways to look at that. On the one hand, it's, oh my God, the sky is falling. This is disastrous. And the other hand is, hey, you know what? If you've recognized that for whatever reason, something isn't working, that is the time to make a change. And I know that nobody likes change, but everybody likes improvement. And maybe they feel like there's some necessary things that need to happen. And maybe Tony allowed it to be their idea. I know some folks have, quit, and other folks have been released. What do you make of all the behind the scenes moving and shaking in AEW?
I think, for me, I look at it from a macro perspective, step back and look at the big picture. And yes, all of the aforementioned names have either resigned or been asked to leave. It's interesting, but when you look at the totality of it, let's start with Cody Rhodes, Jade Cargill, CM Punk, for crying out loud. It sounds bizarre that, CM Punk and Shawn Michaels were head to head against Collision. It's like, what happened to the world I used to live in? It's weird. But when you look at the top talent that is unable to function within AEW, when you look at the behind the scenes talent that for whatever reason, their own fault or not, it doesn't matter. They're gone. It kind of paints a little bit of a picture. And I don't want to pretend I know what's going on in AEW because I don't talk to anybody in AEW. I really don't. But it's pretty obvious that there's a leadership issue there. Why did Cody leave? Why did CM Punk leave? And I've been very, very critical of CM Punk and the way he's handled himself, and will stand behind the things I said in the context of when they occurred and how he handled them. But look what's happening now. Look where Punk is now, in a more structured environment where there is leadership and there are protocols and there are guardrails, and you just don't have talent running fucking amok. And trust me, I've been a part of talent fucking running amok, so I'm not throwing stones here. I was responsible for it myself in some regards, but it's one of the reasons why it's obvious to me. I've been there. I've done that. Being able to have a good perspective about the wrestling business isn't about batting 1,000. If you can bat 500 in the wrestling business, you're an all-star. But the value that you get in learning and being in the business is you learn what works, you learn what doesn't work, and you stay away from the things that don't and lean into the things that do, like any other venture or business or job. But what's going on in AEW suggests to me that there's a lack of leadership and a lack of vision. And when that happens, talent and staff, high-level staff, become very frustrated. And that frustration turns into resentment, and the resentment turns into anger, and all of a sudden people start leaving or being asked to leave. And that's what I see. You just go back and look at the very beginning. To lose Cody Rhodes, and I still don't know why Cody left. I don't know that anybody does other than Cody and Tony.
He said it's a personal issue.
Well, okay. Well, that covers a lot, doesn't it? I mean, it's a personal issue. But I don't know. I hope things turn around. I hope Tony wakes up one day and goes, okay, I need somebody. It's actually probably several people to really help me turn this thing around. And he reaches out to some really young, professional, experienced people that can bring some stability to the vision and to the company, because otherwise this is death by 1,000 cuts. I've seen this movie before. This is death by 1,000 cuts.
I don't know
that Tony has the money. It is, as long as Tony's ego is in the game, as long as Tony's passion is in the game, he'll continue. He can take 2 million cuts, but the product is never going to improve until there's a big change in direction.
Well, that's what I hope that is happening is if we do feel like there is a reason to have concern about business growth or lack thereof, or momentum, or any of those things that we talk about, I hope that some of these changes bring about that positive change for the company. But in regards to the Cody Rhodes thing, I think, and boy, I'm going to get just blown up on social media for what I'm about to say here, but I think in a weird way, and I'm not comparing the two talent, but I think the circumstances are similar. I think Cody Rhodes going to wind up being his Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know, when you let Steve Austin go, little did you ever imagine, hey, this guy's going to become the top merch seller for WWE, one of their top guys in main event WrestleMania. I don't think you saw that in Steve Austin at the time. And I don't know that Tony necessarily saw that in Cody. Hey, he's going to go main event WrestleMania and be their top merch seller. I just don't think he saw it.
I don't think any of us did. In fairness to Tony, did you see it? I didn't. I mean, I thought the world of Cody, but I guess, let me clarify. I didn't think never would have dreamed it would have happened as fast as it did. Not that Cody didn't have the ability, but for Cody to leave AEW and be in that position that he's in WWE so quickly, that surprised me, and I didn't see that coming.
Well, I've been hanging out with Bruce Pritchard long enough that I've heard enough of these Vince-isms. Like when somebody would say, "Oh, nobody will believe that." Allegedly, according to Bruce, Vince would say, "They'll believe it when they see it." And I thought, hey man, if they get him over here and they start getting him enough wins, just do the Roman model, sort of, you know, and that's what they did. They loaded him up with wins. He had a feud with Seth and it was almost a clean sweep. I did see him coming over and being in the mix and being, you know, positioned as a top guy, because I also knew as a business strategy, boy, you sure do get everybody turning their heads if you have Cody Rhodes, a founding member of the AEW crew, all of a sudden become a top guy here. There's going to be a whole lot of people who left here frustrated like Cody did, who thought maybe the grass is greener over here in AEW, who look back and say, well, if they can do that for him, I mean, I think there was something to that. And I think, you know, with the way they rolled out the red carpet for Jade Cargill, and you've seen what they've done with CM Punk, it feels like WWE is certainly a new place without Vince McMahon at the helm and Hunter's there. And maybe they're trying to send some messages within the industry. Like, I don't know if you saw, but a lot of talent have the week before. I think all talent have the week before Christmas off. Like, there's no events scheduled. That was not the case for a long, long time. Like, a lot, I can't tell you how many wrestlers who worked for WWE through the years have missed a lot of those holidays or had a day home and then it was time to go again. And now the idea is, you know, let's spend a little more time and prioritize the fam. And I just think it's interesting to think how not only is AEW changing, but WWE is too.
They are. And I was really happy to see that. I mean, because look, again, I can't speak from firsthand experience. The physical drain on a WWE performer in particular, because of the schedule, I can only try to imagine what that's like. And forget about what you do in a ring for 12 or 15 minutes a night. That's hard enough. But traveling, as you know, Conrad, and I experience occasionally now still, traveling is a grind.
Yes.
It is so much harder today than it was 10 years ago. Certainly way more difficult than it was 20 and 30 years ago.
Why do you say that?
I'll speak for myself. I can't get anywhere without at least 2 connections. Now, part of that is because of where I live here in Wyoming. Yeah. But even if you live in a major market other than, let's say, New York, Atlanta, LA, maybe Chicago, anywhere that you want to go. If you live outside of those markets, anywhere that you want to go, you're going to get a connecting flight. The number of direct flights have been reduced so dramatically over the last 10 or 15 years. That's number one. And this is just a fact of life. And I don't mean this to sound like a political statement. Okay. It's just a freaking fact. And anybody that's been flying over the last 12 months knows what I'm saying is true. The number of cancellations and delays that are not weather related, they're staff related. There's a shortage of pilots. There's a shortage of flight attendants. There's a shortage of ground crew teams. There's a shortage of air traffic controllers because of COVID. A lot of pilots, air traffic controllers, flight attendants did not want to get the jab, refused to get it, and got laid off or let go. And now you've got a shortage of air traffic controllers. Now, when I do fly, I fly out of Denver more often than not, or Billings, Montana. And even when I fly out of Billings, Montana, because there's more flights available to me than there are in Cody, obviously, I fly to Denver or Salt Lake, I connect, and then I go on to wherever I'm going, and probably have at least one more connection along the way. But more often than, I would say 50% of the time, just happened to my brother-in-law yesterday, 50% of the time, when you're booked on a flight that's leaving or connecting in Denver, you're going to get an email that says, sorry, flight's been postponed till tomorrow. And it's almost always air traffic control shortages. They've got to slow down the amount of traffic coming in and out of airports because there's a shortage. It's a safety issue. All of those things combined just make it physically more challenging to travel. I think the physical part of traveling is probably the most grueling part of what happens, of the challenge on a talent physically. It's not what's going on in the ring. It's what you have to go through to get to the ring. And then, oh, by the way, you get up the next morning, go off and do it again. That's such a grind, man. I have nothing but admiration for people that do it. It's a physical grind, but it's also a mental and emotional grind. And to your point that led us to this, being able to give talent time with their family is critically important. And when you look at go back and look at the 70s and the 80s or 90s when talent was on the road, and it was why do you think they partied as hard as they did? Not making an excuse for it, but it's a fact of life. You're on the road 52 weeks a year. You're not with your family. You're not in your own bed. There's really not much else to do other than get yourself in trouble and get to the next town. So I think it's overall really, it's great. And I think Triple H probably recognizing, based on what I've heard, recognizing that the talent needs to have a little bit more of a healthy family life and stable family life. I think it's going to be nothing but great for the business.